Well, good afternoon, everyone. We are back again here at Pirate University. This is normally every Wednesday we run a podcast called AVX Live. And so today we're going to do our Pirate University version of AVX Live. So once again, I'm Joe Guilderson, President of Corporate AV. And this here is my co-host, Mr. Finch.
Hello, hello.
And you have quite a busy environment back there.
I did. I wanted to bring the energy, right? We got a whole staff back here doing things.
They're doing so many things. So many things. But so far we've been covering software. We've worked on hardware with lighting products. You know, we're doing a lot of technical. But there's another side to what we do, and those are the softer skills, and they are equally important. So this discussion is going to be about the client experience, okay, which is that kind of bigger picture of what we do. We're not just there to push buttons and hang up screens and make sound come through speakers. We're there to help clients achieve a goal. And that's really the key to what we do. You know, we're their resource to accomplish things. So, you know, we have a lot of different clients, but we also work through people, you know, such as event planners and event producers. So we thought that they would actually be the perfect people for us to have this discussion with. You know, so we're going to talk to two of our favorites today. And we're going to bring them on in just a minute. Ryan, why don't you provide just a little bit of housekeeping so people know where to put questions and chats and things?
Absolutely. Well, yeah, Joe, like you said, we're usually doing this AVX format on LinkedIn, YouTube, and what's the other one? LinkedIn, YouTube, and Facebook. There we go. And usually what I'm asking for is the like, the comment, the share, subscribe, all of the above, but this is obviously a little bit different. So we do want your feedback. We do want your input. And to do so, you're going to look over on the right-hand side. You'll have an option for chat and polls and people and Q&A. Just give a look right above those options and make sure you're in the session. And that'll let us, you know, really kind of filter down the feedback specific to this session as opposed to being able to chat with everyone in the event. Of course, if you'd like to do that, by all means. It looks like Joe just put God, with the shirt again. There we go. Whose shirt is better? I'm going to vote myself. There we go.
There's a poll.
Yes, exactly. So again, we'll ask for your engagement. Questions are welcome. Of course, we do have an in-person audience watching in our studio as well. So hopefully you're all hearing me loud and clear at this point. But yeah, I just want to make sure that everyone has a way to kind of chime in because that's really what we're all about, right?
Absolutely. So I think everybody knows what to do now. Look, we're going to go through most of this panel with our two elite panelists. And then there's always a chance that, you know, we might bring somebody else on. I mean, let's see how this thing goes. Anything can happen in this hybrid event. I mean, it's very unpredictable. So, all right. So let's, Ryan, I'm going to let you do the moderating honors. Let's please welcome Chereese Jervis-Hill of Events to Remember and Shana Hurkala of Wings Unlimited.
Welcome.
Hi.
Welcome. Hello. Happy to be here.
Isn't this fun?
It is so fun. I like the elite, that we're the elite group. So I'm liking that, Chereese. I think we've got good company here.
I know. And I like that we're favorites. Thank you guys. I'm sending you hugs and kisses.
Oh, wow. Those are virtual hugs. Yes.
That's right. They're being received loud and clear. Thank you.
And those are totally okay, according to my HR department.
Oh, sorry.
Virtually.
They're virtually okay.
You've got to be mad because you've lost the who had the better shirt. So sorry about that.
Yeah,
you know, things were going to happen. I mean,
that's right. That's right. Well, Joe, why don't we give our audience, obviously, you know, we've gotten to know the two of you over the course of a couple of projects that we've worked on together. And as we know, in the virtual setting, you really do work pretty closely. So that's been nice for us. But we'd love for our lovely audience watching in our studio and at home virtually to get a chance to learn a little bit more about each of you. So Chereese, if we could start with you, just a little bit of background to let the audience know where you're coming from.
Absolutely. My name is Chereese Jervis-Hill. I'm the president and founder of Events to Remember. Events to Remember is a full-service event management and public relations firm, and we work with a lot of corporations on corporate events. We work with non-for-profits on fundraising events, and we also work on some individual kind of PR campaigns for entrepreneurs and small businesses. So happy to be here, and thank you for having me.
Wonderful. And Shana, how about yourself?
Sure. Shana Hurkala, I'm Managing Director of Wings Unlimited. We're a 35-year-old event engineering company based in Connecticut with a global reach, traditionally, in-person events throughout the globe, but turned fully virtual with all your support over this past year and a half. And I myself have been in the business for 22 years and have seen a lot of changes and learned a lot about production and hybrid and virtual this past year. It's been pretty exciting.
Yeah, I think you guys you've both gone through a lot of different environments and changes, and that's why it really makes sense that you can help our audience learn. Because as we were talking about backstage in our very official green room, that most of our people are very technical, and sometimes they're in touch with the audience, the planner, the end clients, but many times they're also not in touch with them, so they really don't get the whole story.
Right.
They know their role, but they don't know the whole picture. And, so I think the easiest way is we start right at the beginning, and so we're going to try to direct this thing and move it along. But let's start with why. Chereese, what are you usually looking for when you bring on an audio visual or a lighting production company?
So I'm looking for, in essence, a partner. I really am looking for a partner that is going to do what they say they're going to do, really understand. I try to take a minute to educate my partners, just overall the organization, the type of guest, just kind of what to expect. And really, as busy as we are, have a listening ear, because every organization is different. Some folks, especially in this new virtual space, it's, when you're dealing with someone who's of a certain age, it's just logging on to a different site is going to be difficult. So really just, a partner that is there and understands that, we're going to have different folks and being understanding and really doing what you say you're going to do, and knowing that we really have crazy timelines that we have to hit together. So, those are just some of the pieces.
Right.
Sure. Well, and, it's funny you mentioned you kind of offering your vision, and then it's kind of up to us to deliver on those promises. We typically start, right at the beginning of, what is the purpose of this event? What are you trying to do? Because if we're not on the same page there, then you're fighting an uphill battle the entire time. And then, of course, your point about the audience having whether it's a particular age demographic or what have you, that, especially in the virtual side, becomes so important, with everything that technology touches in this realm, right?
Yeah.
So, it really is important for our guys to know, what's the purpose here and who are we touching, right?
Yeah.
Shana, how about you?
Well, I think the partnership is key, right? So, we oftentimes repeat, there's some repetitiveness towards the event, but going back to trusted partners, whatever that event might be, and whether it turns to hybrid or in person or virtual, and you find that trust is so important. The partnership and the trust that you build with a vendor, we're going to keep coming back to each other, because we know that problems happen. Issues are going to occur. It's not a flaw. This is not flawless. You'd love it to always be that way, but there's human error, there's technology errors. These things are going to happen. But once we trust each other and understand that we find that common goal, what is it that the client is really looking for, searching for? How do we solve that together? And then in that combination, it's saying, you're not perfect, I'm not perfect, but I'm going to check you, you're going to check me. And in that whole collaboration, the event is going to go off flawless, right? We're going to all search for that and make sure the attendees are happy. And I think it is interesting now with the virtual, you're being pulled as a team more in touch with our customers. So where Chereese and I usually would always be the main contact with the client and never, you just hear some orders and sort of list and run of show. Now you're really in touch with those clients. Green room, you're talking directly with my customer, and I need to know that we're all in the same, that we all have the same vision. You know who my customer is, you understand the idiosyncrasies, and that's that partnership. You're an extension of who we are. And so it's paid off to go through all these bumps in the roads and all the different types of events we can offer. Friendly face, we know what you're doing, we can trust each other, and that partnership really just comes through with all your people.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Well, you touched on something that I mention a lot, somewhat tongue in cheek, but it does ring true, and that's the trust factor. And you'll hear me sometimes say, usually to our people, but in our line of work, failure is literally public humiliation. And people I know it sounds kind of funny, but it's not true, and that's the level of, that's what brings that trust factor, is that, like, I'm really relying on you to prevent me from being publicly humiliated. And that may be a little bit of an over exaggeration at times, but other times it's not. So, it certainly speaks to that.
I mean, it's the promises that we make, and you guys have to see through to that. So there is a lot of that. The trust is so key.
Definitely the trust. And also too, just, I strive to exceed my clients' expectations all the time. Like that is my mission, to exceed their expectations. And things happen. That's just the nature of the beast. But it's just knowing that if I missed a step with us doing something virtually, that Ryan is like, hey, Chereese, I just wanted to let you know that this is going to look this way if we do it that way. You know what I mean? So really relying on your partner to kind of, and things where it's like, hey, Joe, I just want to let you know that, this client, this is a big deal for them. So we need to make sure that this doesn't happen. I think having that relationship and just those additional little touch points really make a big difference. So that trust factor is 100%. And being aligned and knowing that, this is how I take care of my clients, and we're working together, and I need you to make sure that that same level of exceeding their expectations is there.
Well, I think you guys are probably really on point. I mean, I know that we're not a fit for everybody. There are certainly a number of different types of events that we're not really designed for. And even if you take something as popular as on the social side with weddings and bar mitzvahs and those types of parties, we're not really designed for that. We work on some, certainly, mostly because of our relationships. Because that's what we're in the relationship business, really. But we're not really a direct to, like, the bride or the bride's mother fit. Like, we're just not. I mean, we're much more designed towards a corporate group or a nonprofit or a hospital or a middle producer, such as the two of you. Like, we're much more designed towards that. So your point about with the virtual becoming much closer to the client, especially with the backstage. I mean, we've gotten to interact directly with people we never would have gotten to interact with.
Usually it's behind the screen in that little small room back there, and somebody might peek behind and say, oh, look at all those people.
Yeah, there's usually 4 bodyguards at that point when we're trying to put a microphone on somebody, but not in this case. I mean, Ryan, who are some of the people you've gotten to interact with?
We had Ambassador Susan Rice, and then not to juxtapose these two, but then Rob Thomas. So kind of an eclectic mix, but certainly a level of access and exposure to people that, our end clients are really trying to make sure things go well for them. And so, we have to really be ready to represent not only ourselves, but also our client to a very high level. And it's a higher standard really than before.
Yeah. And that is the softer skills that you touched on, because as much as, you might be setting up screens and not really bumping into the team, the senior people or whichever in a normal sense, now they are, and their interaction in a green room is so helpful for them to be professional and be talking to them and welcoming them and understanding, who the client is, how to pronounce the client's name correctly, or
Right.
is it a global company? Does this person have English as their first language? Those are things that maybe they wouldn't have put their attention to before. They're talking about the technical skill that they're selling in, but it is a soft skill that can really benefit us. So, and it's a nice sort of that sort of charm of the events can really make people feel comfortable. And that's oftentimes one of the bumps is when you're in a green room. You don't know I got into the green room. I've done these before. I know Hopin, I know, and I couldn't find my stupid button. And I'm like, and you guys called me and figured it out. And so, that's really helpful because I'm here wanting to make sure I'm doing what you've asked me to do. And all those speakers, whether they're professional or not, are needing that same comfort.
Yeah, no, I think you're right on point. You guys, you know what you're doing. So that's why you're here.
Depends on the day.
You guys know what you're doing. But this one, I'm going to direct this one towards you, Shana. I know that you've managed a lot of corporate events, especially. What have your experiences typically been with audiovisual? And that can be good or bad. Let us hear it. Just lay it on us.
Yeah, really. I felt, and this, I think my real take on it is I've always had a great success with the audiovisual, even in the virtual world that we've turned to, because I have had the luxury of 9 times out of 10 picking a partner that I trust and who's going to put extra effort in and own it when they make a mistake and fix it and do everything they can to rectify. That's where I feel I'm oftentimes in a really good position for audiovisual. I think it's very highly frustrating when I'm working with clients who don't understand the difference between a corporate audiovisual group like yourselves and what you offer there, and say, but PSAV is right there and they're cheap. Or, my brother Joe, he has another place and he's got a DJ booth, or I just want to use Zoom and can't you make it great? I think Ryan, we were through this. We were like, what you're wanting to do is we can't do it. Like you're just putting a square peg in a round hole, and we did it, but it was tough. And so those are the times when I find we have the challenges or the failures in audiovisual. It's not because it's the battle between what the client thinks they should pay or client thinks they can deal with, and then what they really want at the end of the day. And so now I think we're going into the situation where from March till September of the last year, it was a lot of Band-Aid work, right? Figure it out. Then September through the fall was much more interesting, right? Really, okay, let's invest some time. Let's see how it's doing. Now that we're having to do a whole nother year of this, seems like, I don't like more, but if we're doing more of them, we're now able to say, see what you got. There's new technology, there's new things to do. Let's build on that. Let's not settle for the same old solutions. And those who want it done cheaply, really, we have to turn away at that point.
Right. And Shana, I'm curious to know, as a little follow-up here, do you kind of alluded to some clients thinking that all of this is easier than it is. Mm-hmm. And honestly, we experienced a lot of that in the beginning, and honestly, little bits of it, continue to this day. Mm-hmm. Would you say that there's still, a significant percentage of groups that think this is easier than it is? And why do you think that might be?
I don't think they understand the village that's behind it. And I think,
Sure.
Chereese, I'm sure you're thinking the same way. It's not just the two of you guys sitting there doing this whole thing, right? And there's days before, there's days after, there's content, there's tech support, there's just so many. It takes a village, right? So that is one of the things that I don't think they see. And time is money, people are money, intelligence and the value that you offer that costs money. So it's not just the platform. It's not just those situations. It's the human capital that you have, that you offer and build upon, that is really important. And it's trying to break that with them, to make them realize it's put time and energy towards production, and that creates money. And you have to have the budget to be able to do that. And if you don't have the budget, it is kind of going down the wrong path. Like there are now that we're getting more events happening again, hopefully. Ultimately, you can turn down the ones that just are like the, bar mitzvah and the wedding that you really don't want to be doing in this, for the next stage, right?
Yeah.
No, absolutely.
And I think people just don't think about all of the gazillion pieces that it takes to create a great virtual event. We'll show past virtual events to new clients. And, this happened recently where someone said, well, I don't see why the cost is so high because, it's you're just videotaping someone, like it should be a lot cheaper than a live in-person event. And, I really had to kind of take that time to educate the new potential client that it's, the virtual events are a ton of work. It's so much more than a live in-person event. It's really, we like to take the time to really coach the speakers and just make sure that, the scripting is done just so you come out with a quality end result. So I just think sometimes with the pricing and budgeting, I think they just don't really think about all of the little tiny details, And
I think they really do think just record on Zoom, send it to me, put an intro out, everything's fine. I got my white PowerPoint with 500 words on it. It's going to be fine. And we know better.
Yeah.
So it's always about convincing them the value in that. And so I think us as an advocate for who you all are, ultimately our job is to get you the programs that are, show your value and are able to use all your skills. But there's always that budget squeeze, and that's where it just gets really difficult. And we appreciate the help that you give.
Yeah, for sure.
Well, and it's budget meets expectation. And as long as those two are in line, then we're in a good position. It's when those two things aren't in line is when things become challenging. But, Chereese, I want to give you a chance to answer that question directly. Obviously, you being, much more focused on a lot of our nonprofit events and fundraisers, experiences, maybe not just limited to virtual events, but audiovisual and lighting, good and bad, like Joe said. What, how would you categorize that?
Well, like Shana, I have surrounded myself around really smart AV people, so I haven't had a lot of those, but we have over the years. I mean, I've been doing this for 17 years. So, having Wi-Fi issues, that's a beautiful castle that's all stone and, the Wi-Fi is not as great and, losing sound for a minute, different things like that. So it's, we have some of those stories, but they're very few. They're not a lot. And I think, again, it's really just surrounding yourself around really smart people. And that's what I do all the time. So.
Well, that makes sense. We actually had a comment from Jason Thompson, and he's asking about how do you guys see the budget share changing in the hybrid events world? And I know this is something we have this discussion at least twice a day. Is there acceptance that hybrid events will cost more? I think that's the bulk of the question.
Yeah.
Is, look, even as we're doing this, we've already had live from a stage here, sent with remote audience and live audience. We've had live right to remote presenters, and now here we are in all four of us are remote. Right. And it's a series of different things. But the reality is, if there's not like two teams doing it, it's pretty chaotic. I got to tell you.
Yeah. The prices are going to go up because you're in essence creating two events. That's really how I explain it to clients, that we're merging them together, but we are in essence creating two events. So you need two teams per se, and the beauty is with tying in with the hybrid approach, you get that virtual audience. So you're, more people engaged, but the budgets are definitely going to go up. So I always tell clients, let's, get ready. It's coming.
Yeah. Yeah. And that is the hard part is they need the pill to swallow is it's twice as much, right? So you're having your in-person and your virtual and they're not budgeting for that. They're not. They're not thinking, oh, wow, I didn't have any events last year. I had no virtual, I had no in-person events. I took the money and I banked it. And now we're going to have two events at the same time. They're not doing that. So it is going to be really difficult because even just the events that are canceling right now, everything that was in person just, 2 weeks ago went swooping around and everybody's like, never mind, we're just going to go virtual. Well, you can't just switch the light like that, and money that you might have had allocated for stage and all that doesn't just immediately transfer over. So the frustrations for all of us in that budgeting world is just, it's not ending, unfortunately. It is educating them the best we can, or allocating money in the right way. Not having food and beverage for the certain part and no travel and so on saves them that, but then you're moving it over here and
You're moving it.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Do you think that they see it as there's a larger potential return and that they are reaching a bigger audience, or maybe a different audience? Do they see it like that, or is it just it's more money?
I'll let you answer that.
I mean, I you know, I do. For me, it's more helpful because, you know, if, let's say, an award ceremony, right? It's a fundraising event, and one of the honorees who their family wouldn't fly to New York to kind of see this, but now their family in South Carolina, their family in Texas, they can all watch. They can all text to donate and help this organization. And now it's, you know, they're like, oh, this is the organization that you were talking about, or board members. Now it's, you know, family members or friends or colleagues in other states. Oh, this is the organization that you serve on the board. So for me, I see it a little bit more because we actually have results tied to it. You know, we can look at the numbers after the event and see that, you know, people logged in from all of these different places, people donated from all of these different places. So it is, but still, you know, the money talk is always still hard. You know, even when you can kind of show data and have proof, it's still like, yeah, but it's costing X, Y, and Z, you know.
On the corporate side, I think it's hard because although their invite list could grow, right? So they could invite 40,000 people instead of just the, you know, 400 people that traditionally come to their customer event.
Mhm.
The challenge still lies that who are the high value people that are actually attending at the end of the day. And because virtual is so easy to miss, skip, be late, come in, come out.
Yeah.
They're not getting all the value from that as much as I think they'd like to. So they want to go back to the in-person. They want to be able to shake hands with their top customers, or be able to, you know, really see in person and connect with leadership to be able to be an internal conference. So they crave that, but they're doing the virtual because they have to, and accommodate either those employees or make sure not, you know, to broaden their depth of lead generation. But they fight each other that way because you're not getting all the value that you truly want. But I do think the regional stuff is going to be really interesting, coming up with the hybrid. Certainly, you know, having a conference that's simulcast that we used to do, right? Previously, you do a simulcast. That was like where our big virtual world was. Like you brought in a truck and you simulcast it out.
Yeah.
Now, so I think that is going to be an interesting part, because hosting, you know, let's say, you know, a smaller group in Barcelona, a smaller group in California, smaller group in Florida, and one in New York, and they're all seeing the content at the same time. They again can have cocktails at the end or whatever their regional, but the senior leaders would be doing a broadcast from one location. I think those might be really the focus, and really, but there's again twice as expensive, maybe 4 times.
Yeah.
Yeah, that had traditionally been reserved for specific meetings, and they were very specific. You know, I remember one of the first times we had one of our international groups. They had moved they didn't have enough space inside their building. They put a giant tent out in a parking lot. And then, you know, we ran hundreds of feet of Cat5 to get internet out to this tent. And there was like weeks of testing to get this thing to work, you know. And then at some point, the client was just sitting there looking. The person was speaking from France. They were interacting with the person in the tent. I looked over. I said, "You don't think this is amazing?"
Now look,
it's pretty amazing. And meanwhile, now we could do it for basically free. You know, in a primitive way, it can be done for free.
Yeah.
I mean, that was probably $70,000. You know,
Oh my gosh.
so, you know, it's and that's only a few years.
Yeah,
I mean, it's really not a lot of time.
Has been amazing. The speed of how we've had to evolve as a group, and doing this from people's homes, and with their, you know, the mercy of a lot of your AV challenges, I think, is the clients, Wi-Fi bandwidth. You know, they refuse to leave their house. They've got to be doing everything there. They don't have a camera, and the client's like, "Why did it look so bad?" And you're like, this is not my AV teams. This is what you gave me, right?
Yeah. I think COVID too has really like kind of just forced some of that stuff too, where it's like, we had to produce some things where, no one wanted an AV team in their home. You couldn't go in, at a certain point. So it really was just kind of coaching them. Okay, make sure you have lighting, make sure this, make sure that, look for. So I feel like we all just kind of, learned by fire, I do have a question for you guys though, just with regards to cost. I'm sure you're seeing the cost of and I'm just thinking of some of the event platforms just going up. I'm sure you're seeing cost increases on your side, on the production side, with some of the stuff that you are, things that you need to supply. How is that? Is that
labor in particular, I think, is really high.
Yeah, of course. And
labor is at an extreme shortage.
No,
that's the big issue. We've had that discussion today. Some of the team we had on earlier, they're working remotely from Omar from EV Educate and Jeff out at Zoom Test Kitchen and Ed Willick, who's actually here in our live audience today. They were just hosting a show of their own podcast, discussing the same thing with, 1,000 people around the country. There's an extreme shortage on the technical side of really skilled people. And I think people undervalue that. And so there is certainly a supply and demand issue on that. There's also tremendous shortages on equipment when it comes to trying to get certain things. It's mostly on new items, not so much on a date, like an event by event basis. But we've been waiting 2 months for some audio mixers, and we have no idea when they're actually coming. But
that I had a client who was wanting to. They're like, we're going to buy a bunch of stuff and put it into theirs, and I said, you're not going to get that.
You're not going to get anything.
That.
Now, there's a lot of challenges in that.
Right.
We've seen a lot of our costs go up in almost every capacity, and that's it's just the nature of it right now.
Yeah.
And everybody's at a very limited bandwidth.
Oh yeah. Multi.
And I mean, I got 3 notes today. How come you haven't answered me today? I'm like, I don't know. I'm in the middle of something right now. But but that's the nature of it. Everybody only has this much capacity right this second.
Well, and also, I mean, just as another question, I'm sure you have other ones, but I was you inspired me to ask one myself, and I was thinking about the cancellations, because I've been, it has become harder and harder for me to be able to say, okay, yes, it's 31 days out and the AV company hasn't really done anything yet, and it's just been very challenging to see how many years are we going to do this, right? Like kick it, and the vendors and the suppliers and your team are the ones who suffer from that, and I've seen venues have much more, much stricter, much stronger cancellations where they're just not going to be as forgiving as they used to be. And like a DJ is like, you pay me. I'm if you don't have the event, just pay me. It's $500. Like, just give me a break, give the man a break, right? So there, I do think, like, the force majeure part aside, I think the cancellations for shrugging your shoulders, like it's not a great idea, but it's not a pandemic necessarily. I'm curious if whether you guys are going to make some shifts in that at all going forward.
Joe, that one's all you.
Yeah, we just had this discussion. I was having this discussion with a couple of people, just the other day, because we're looking at different, the entire audio-visual side and production side has been looking at our language and terms, and
right.
There's been different suggestions from some industry people. They're hard for us to put into place, meaning there's some pay-as-you-go types of scenarios, which are, think of construction. Like, that's usually reserved for the permanent installation, construction types things, or really big projects.
Right.
But the vast majority of our projects, the vast majority are under $20,000. They just don't pay like that. It's also very difficult to actually execute in the sense of going through all that paperwork process. And, AV companies aren't good at that anyway. So I'll tell you, they're just not designed like that. They think pretty lights and buttons, and, so it's a different thought process. And I don't think we've determined our final answer, because a lot of our clients are long-term clients.
Right.
Which makes it a little harder.
Harder, yeah.
Because, like I said, we're in the relationship business more than anything else. And, I would hate to alienate one of our long-term clients for something that's out of anyone's control, but, you are stuck with a lot of costs.
Yeah.
And you can't survive if you're stuck with costs. It
Mhm.
doesn't work well, long term. So you have to figure out a way. So it's in discussion, but we don't have our answer yet. But
Right.
it's going around the entire country, and I'm sure maybe Jason from Ireland can tell us if they're having that discussion over there. But it's certainly happening right now, currently around
Right.
our country.
I bet.
Yeah.
But just to keep things kind of moving along a little bit, because I still like to think that we're going to get back on site and do some things soon,
Right.
But
We are, guys. We are.
Yeah, it's
I
going to
would
happen.
hope it's real soon. But hey, Chereese, what would you say are some of the important actions that we as a production team can kind of take on site to help you meet your goals?
Reviewing, actually, I know we know that we always send the run a show beforehand, but I like to just kind of have like a prep meeting right before, because updates always happen. Taking the time to really kind of go through those items and just talk them through. Be ready for adjustments as they happen, because we all know once we're on site, a speaker gets up and, we got to make adjustments there sometimes. So be flexible, because things do happen. And, think ahead, let the planner know if you see something that, can be a potential problem. You guys look at things differently than we do, so when you see something that looks like it could trigger something else, just kind of keep us posted.
Absolutely. We actually have a term for that here in corporate AV. It's called noticering. And there's somebody who's probably yelling in our studio right now saying, "That's what I do." We joke around that a lot of the time, it's a team effort, right? Sales team would write the order and operation takes it. And there's checks and balances along the way to make sure that things don't slip through the cracks. And sometimes it just takes somebody noticing something and saying, "Hey, what's this about?" And that'll, prompt a conversation. So that being communicative, maybe there's something that you didn't anticipate that isn't really in our purview, but it's worth asking the question, because ultimately we want the same thing. We want a successful event.
Mhm.
So, certainly an important point. And then also staying flexible is another point you made. And I thought that's an interesting one, because in the in-person AV side, it is so much easier to do that. It's so much easier to pick something up and move it over there. Whereas on the virtual side, we find ourselves being a little less flexible at times, because there's so much complexity to the systems that we're running. Again, that kind of behind the curtain, no one really knows what's going on. There's a whole workforce back here. Who knows what they're doing? But there really is a lot of complexity to it that sometimes is very difficult to change on the fly. But again, being communicative, staying, upfront and upbeat about it are really the keys, at least from our perspective, to make sure that we don't put you in a bad position. Right.
But I think, Ryan, you just to kind of speak for having worked with you guys directly, like, you are very flexible. There's times where it's like, "Oh, Ryan, they don't kill me, but," or like, "Amanda, email Ryan and ask him if we could blah, 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 blah." And some things it's like, "Yeah, we'll figure it out." And some things you're like, "Chereese, we're cutting it too close," like, it just for the integrity. And I appreciate that, because then it gives me leverage to talk to the client. "Look, we can do this, but this is, we don't want to." So I think that you're I think that you really are very flexible. So
well, thank you. I'm glad to hear that.
Can be flexible. And I understand. I think it's just really having that conversation and letting the planner or the client know, "Look, if we do this A will equal this." So just that going back to the communication.
Well, and I think the hard part is that you then have, because you're at the mercy of your platform, right? You've got the platform that you're dealing with,
right.
And then you have your customers who assume, "Can I just come in with my little zip drive and plug it into your computer like 5 minutes before, and everything's gonna be fine?" So you're in between those two spaces to battle. And I agree. I think you guys have always been quite flexible and tell us when it's not a good idea.
Well, that's good to hear, and one thing that, we've talked about a little bit is that some of in the in-person production world, all of the work for the most part, the lion's share of the work happens, the day before, that morning, right? We're building things.
Yeah.
Whereas in the virtual setting, it's really being built over the course of, weeks and sometimes months leading up to it. So when we get to that day, maybe that's what I'm saying, Chereese, is when we get to that day, there is less that we're able to be flexible with, just in general. But I'm glad you've still managed to have that experience. And well, Sean, I want to give you a chance to answer the question directly as well. What are the most important actions to you that a production team or someone in our position can do on site or virtually to help you meet your goals?
I would say I would agree with the calling out for things that will not work, right? Or trying to push something to a limit that is you don't feel comfortable with. I think that's really helpful. Sometimes we just say it is what it is, but I think there's some of that. And I would say the most important part for me is check, double check. One of the things that's always so difficult is the, you send a Zoom link and when you send it, you backspace and all of a sudden the Zoom link doesn't work anymore. It's these simple things that can happen. And I oftentimes feel, when I'm dealing with one or two key contacts of an AV group, they're doing all of that work. They're heavy lifting. And like you guys are, you're multitasking. You're on 7 different programs at once. You're not just nodding to me, you're nodding to everybody else. And so there is something to be said for that skill set of having somebody either outside of your program or, maybe the person you traditionally does the lighting or whatever, and having them come and just do a fresh eye double check on everything. And that's labor, that's time, whichever. Take a pause. I like to look at it as a dark day. I don't oftentimes get that, but there are clients that I'm able to say, we want a dark day. Everything has to be loaded. We check, double check. Everybody click every button and whatever. We test it out. And it's not a rehearsal. It's really an opportunity for us to really make sure everything's working well. That's a luxury. We don't get that often. But I would say, it's really a lofty goal we should all try to push towards on really important customer events specifically, I would say. Employee events, they tend to be more forgiving. But I think that's something we can all kind of try to go towards.
Oh, absolutely. As our friend Mike Gryab here in the comments, our 3 most important words: test, test, test. It certainly is. It certainly is a luxury at times, or at least it feels that way.
It is. And
I'm curious.
That's why the changes are so hard. Oh, add a room, add a session. Can you do a new expo? Can you put it in the booth session? And you're like, well, yeah, but then we haven't even looked at it and it's going live in an hour. So those are the things. It's really unfortunate because I know you guys want to be yes people. I know that. I can see that. That's why I think we both work with you. It's it's yes, I can do that. Let's figure out how. And it's hard to say no because your DNA is to get it right and do it and work really hard. And moving a light here versus moving a session in technology, I can't help you there, but it's very different.
Well, we've actually had several times where people gave us a final cut of a video 15 minutes before it was supposed to air.
And the video was 30 minutes.
We played it and had no idea what was going to happen because we never watched it. Right. We said, "Are you sure?" Because we don't even have the time to look at it.
There's like some crazy meme that comes in the middle. That'd be fun.
Right.
No, and that's not a good position for anybody to be in.
No. Very uncomfortable.
Yeah.
Unfortunately.
Well, is anything like that, Shana? You had mentioned, that Zoom link being broken, but I'm curious, and honestly, either of you can answer this, but is there anything in particular, whether virtual or in person, that kind of keeps you up at night, typically the night before an event or the day, the days leading up to
all of it.
All of it.
All of it.
There you go.
Makes me want to throw up.
Yeah, it's it's amazing, even with the virtual events, probably more so with the virtual events, just out of our
control.
Yeah, because we do what we do because we're somewhat control freaks, and you have no control. You have everything's planned, everything's in order. Your run show is great, and it's and you guys are great. But hey, Facebook, Wi-Fi, it's just so many different things that can So I pray a lot, and
it's the darkness of it, right? So as traditional on-site people, right? I can go behind the curtain and be like, John, the video, or I can say, I can be there and I could hear them talking, trying to solve something, or it's like, food and beverage. We could just, we wear sneakers, we're running around like crazy, right? We're trying to connect the dots and make sure things are happening, and being control freaks who we are. But when it's here and it's virtual, you have to sort of set it and forget it. It's there's only so much I can control. And when you're popping between sessions, I may have the privilege to go into a green room, but I also might not. And if I'm not sure, are you there? Are you talking to them? Are they mad? Are they, and you can't see all of that. So there is that, again, go back to the big trust factor. That can be really difficult, and you set it and forget it. You have to say that I've done everything I can. I've checked everything I can. I'm, letting you, do your job and do it well. And I'm essentially become more of a bystander, and that can be very challenging for control freak event producers. Like, we get it. We want to know every detail. So it's putting all the work in advance is more important now for virtual than before. Can't just do it on the fly or wing it.
Mm-mm. Yeah.
No, I think you're right. And, if all those things are keeping you guys up at night, I guess the real question is, as a technical team, how can we help improve the experience in the production side? For you guys first, and then for the clients and the audience, but really for you guys first.
Well, I've loved the green room part. I think it's been really, being able to be a part of the green rooms more, listening in, hearing how things are going, even just being an innocent bystander and being able to it's a big learning experience for everyone too. So, I don't try to say that I'm, know every technical thing that you guys are all doing, but I find every time I'm on one, I'm learning something new, and I can support you at the other side. So, having the trust to let us in to see what's going on, because that is that part, right? So you're not going to necessarily let your top client, if you're going direct to corporate, like B2B, you're not going to necessarily let that CEO sit in on your green room, but we want to be a part of that team. We want to be able to hear all that good and bad and ugly and be a part of that solution, or hear it so that we can help the client understand you did all you could, or this is the things that happened and we in real time. So I do think that helps me learn and know what you feel is doable and not doable.
Sure.
Yeah.
Well, yeah. Go ahead, Chereese. I'm sorry.
No, I was going to say, I agree with everything Shana said. It really, again, ties back to that kind of communication. I feel comfortable. I'm able to sleep better at night knowing that we've had that conversation, and look, these are the couple of things I want you to consider, or, make sure that whatever it is, those next steps, just having that conversation. So I know that you're comfortable, you're ready, I'm ready, client is ready, just really being honest and being transparent, just so, so I'm able to sleep at night and really reassure the clients, look, we're ready. You sleep at night, even though I won't sleep, but, just get a couple of hours in, so having that conversation, just really being open and honest and keeping us in the loop.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely. Well, all great feedback. And, we had a few more comments with Mike sharing one of his experiences. I encourage everyone to take a look at that, because certainly relatable. And then Jason, our friend from Ireland, another question: are we coming closer to the TV broadcast model, content creation, and that live audiences in hotel ballrooms are watching in on the show more for the virtual audience? I'd personally been saying that a lot, that we take a lot of our cues from broadcast TV, but curious about your perspectives on that.
From my corporate side, definitely. And I think the hard part is, again, going back to the budget. Are they understanding that a live broadcast, the amount of production and pre-production, it's not just, whomever, standing there and saying everything's great. There's teleprompters, there's rehearsals, there's video content they're producing. They're out on the ground and they've got a big, my favorite analogy is when you say, well, can't you just broadcast from wherever? They have a truck with a huge thing on the top and they drive the truck to you. So it's like, no, we can't just do it as simply as that. So, but I think that everybody wants the broadcast. They want it to look slick. They want to, not see, all the garbage on the guy's desk. They don't want, the cat walking by. They want it to look slick, but they have to understand there's a cost to that. But it is that tempo. I think it's the broadcast tempo that people are searching for. So, and Joe, Ryan, we've been through this where they wanted to switch, and Zoom you can't just switch your Zoom from a video to, so they have to go to some sort of solution because they want it to look like a show produced where you have a little bit of, music when you walk in, and then the DJ plays this and an artist is over here. Well, that's a broadcast. And
Right.
So he's right. I mean, that's what they're looking for. The question is, can you deliver it for the dollars that they have? And then is there new technology? vMix is great. You guys, are there things that become more user-friendly for individuals to be able to do that? Everything is getting more user-friendly for the individuals. Then how do you control that still?
Right. Well, I would say too, Chereese, and I'm going to give you a second as well, but it does go both ways. I have to make this point because I just remembered it. I was on a site visit yesterday, and I was in a country club, and I'm standing there waiting for my contact to come out, and there was a TV on, and CNBC, and they had the floating heads, as we call it, right? And one of the guys goes to speak, and he's on mute, and they're like, "We can't hear you." So I'm like, "It happens in TV broadcasting too." So that felt vindicating at the very least. But
agreed.
Chereese, how about from your perspective?
So from my perspective, I mean, it's a little bit different because, working with a lot of not-for-profits, they don't have the budget to spend. They're really trying to raise funds, so it's my goal to make it look like it's a big production. We try to tie in a entertainment element. I mean, we've brought in, DJs and have, done different interactive things to kind of keep it fun and, professionally produced videos. So we try really hard to make it look that way, but we just don't, our clients just don't have the budget to do all of that. So it's more of tying in the creativity to create something that people really want to watch, So it's a little bit different, but yes, always with that goal of having something that really looks quality.
That makes sense. I mean, we always, years ago we would look towards the concert world and that high-end entertainment side and say, okay, how can we take what they're doing and apply some element of it to our events? Because that's what people are watching. That's what they're envisioning in their head, is what's going on. Well, I saw this at the concert. Now, of course, that's a very high level entertainment, and they do the exact same show 150 times in all different places.
Yeah, I love how people are wanting to do the sort of the beam me up. Like right now, there's a hockey tournament that's going on, and these hockey players come in. They the green screen, right? But they beam them up into the room, and these are great things like the Obama Oprah interview, right? They're absolutely green screen stuff that you can do all. But it's not just putting a green screen behind two people and video, it's much more complicated than that. And I think they really love it to be that simple. And that's that broadcast thing, right? I know what they'd like to have, but there is the marrying of all that, of what the technology truly takes to produce something like that, and having the budget, corporate or not, when it comes to nonprofit, obviously they don't want to be spending money in ways that don't make sense. Corporate is looking for sort of impact, and when they're trying to impress their customers, but the accessibility of that complex broadcasting is it's very expensive, and time consuming.
Yeah, every situation's a little bit different. It's just a matter of trying to apply something new, some new ideas to, I think, each event and each production. And I think that's what both of your organizations are very good at.
Cheap and cheerful. I mean, what was like not that long ago, everybody's like, wow, there's music playing between can I get that playlist? And so now it's like, what's next? There's and that's what else you got, but that's not expensive, right? Or there's things that can add to the joy of an event that doesn't always have to be wildly expensive, and it's finding those unique things. And now it's going to be a whole new layer of creative imagination of how to do that when people have done this for so long. In the beginning, everybody was very impressed by small things, right? Now we've got to double down on and find new, interesting ways. So, and it's looking at, what are concerts doing? What is everybody else doing out there? So it's learning from each other.
Yeah, it's something else I'm thinking about too. It's, as we're going back into this virtual space, if we are, which it looks like, we are, what are you going to do differently this year? So.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I guess just so that we can get towards some of those things that you guys are leading towards. I mean, what events do we think are going to stay virtual? What events should be in person? I mean, now that we've had a year and a half of this,
Mm-hmm.
I mean, some events just don't work online. I'm sorry.
Yes, true.
And
Right.
people are definitely, a lot of groups are really, really trying to get to be together in person. So, I mean, what do you think makes sense?
From my side on the corporate, I'm thinking more the customer events where they're traditionally they need the glad handing, or they're missing that, making those connections, virtual connections, have worked till a point, but they're not necessarily craving the the leadership programs to attend for content, TED Talk types. So they really are looking for those opportunities to connect again in person. So I think those are going to be the ones for corporate that are going to go back to in person for sure. Also the leadership programs, because again, it's getting to know each other. It's that really personal connection that helps you with your career, sharing knowledge and such. So I think those will be staying, as well as the incentives. Whether they're going to be the same sort of international travel that we traditionally do now. Hawaii is certainly hot, and even just going to a dude ranch with a smaller group, like people are really needing those. So the incentives, both internal and external for customers and so on, I think those are going to stay in person once we get a little bit clearer. But I think from my perspective, the virtual that's staying are those that are really trying to share with a large employee base. So they really want to have, lots of conversation, lots of content for a large, diverse employee base that they just can't bring together, and just financially, they're just too big to do that. And then second to that, it would really be, like a lot of one-way conversations. So if you're really just preaching to your attendees, content, leadership, training, thought leadership, if that's your way, it's not a two-way conversation, it's one way, then really you can provide that to them at a time frame, and then still have your other events around it. So those are the ones on from my experience that I think corporate will kind of stay virtual or look to go back in person.
Yeah.
Excellent points. Excellent points. And Chereese, I know you have a slightly how about yourself?
So I definitely think the fundraising galas, I see as hybrid events. I see, some people's comfort levels as this Delta thing is the numbers are getting higher. Some people are just not going to feel comfortable coming back out. But some people are still, they're like, hey, I'm vaccinated, I'm ready, as long as everything's set up safely, let's do it. So I do think, and I think you can be effective. We saw that you can be effective with fundraising events being done virtually. So I think the hybrid approach is great, because for those that want to kind of get out there and network, they can be together in smaller groups. You can still tie in your text to donate and your online auctions and all of that stuff, and make it where the people in the room can bid as well as the people that are at home. So I see that kind of being a hybrid approach. Family festivals, we have one in Yorktown that was canceled last year. That event is going on and people are really excited about it. It's outdoors. You can space out the vendors, it's extended hours so people can come throughout the day. It's something to do. You can wear your mask if you feel comfortable. So I think things like that were kind of canceled, that's not going to work virtually. It's just, the fun is not there. The business one-on-one interactions that happen at events like that, so those I see happening. Anything educational, as Shana mentioned, a lot of clients that are doing they do like employee engagement or things like that can be done. That will stay virtual, I think. So for the most part, that's kind of how, how we kind of see things going.
And Chereese, I just thought it was a question if I could ask you. I think from the nonprofit side, I don't have a ton that we do, but I do have a few that I'm looking at, and I find that they raised a lot of money last year. It was real, and I don't know what the psyche is, but I think from everybody was stuck at home at the time, and they were craving the entertainment. So now doing it again, how does that shift? Because they can still go to they now can go to the grocery store, they can go to the coffee shop, they can do regional stuff. So are they going to be as captive as much as they were craving it before? And I don't know how to educate people when they're asking me, because I'm not really in that non-for-profit area that much. And I do feel that there's something there that we're all trying to figure out. How do we keep that level? Because it is all about revenue generation for them to be able to do the more important work that they're doing.
Yeah. So 100%. I feel like people that really know and love your organization, they're going to give. They may not tune into your virtual event this year, but they're definitely going to go on your website. They're going to donate. It's going to happen. But if there's no, thank God, God willing, no lockdowns, everyone's not going to be stuck at home. So I do feel like those numbers are going to be down. That's why I think the hybrid approach makes the most sense, because you can kind of get both audiences.
Yeah, makes sense. Great. Thanks.
Absolutely. Really great feedback. And honestly, this is really what we were looking for, is, what you see coming. And so I guess our last question, as we're coming down to the end of our time here, in a few short words, and maybe it's kind of hard to do so, but where do you see in the next few months from your client bases? There you go. Where do you see the events going, these contingency plans we're hearing all about? Speaking from your own ends of the spectrum, what do we think? And Shana, why don't we start with you?
Oh, goodness gracious. I was going to say Chereese goes first. I was like, oh, darn. So I, unfortunately, over the past 3 weeks, saw all the in-person stuff that was going to be happening in the immediate future, right, in the next month or so, say, let's rebook. So they were not canceling, but they're rebooking to the spring, rebooking to January, February, March, so on. That in person was important for them, but they didn't seem feasible right now. There was too much unknown. The virtual does seem to be completely here to stay, which I'm embracing wholeheartedly, but trying to fit it with the right groups, right? And say, maybe it does make sense for you to wait a little bit longer and go back to in person. The hybrid I'm excited about, because I think it does answer the two parts of the love of events, right? You've got the technology part, people who don't feel like going anywhere or can't for multiple reasons. And then you still have that energy of in person. And I didn't get to see, part of your live audience, but I think that live audience, whether it's 10 people or 2 people, there is something about that feedback and you feel like you're in a room. And I think that the hybrid will be a really energizing part. And maybe they're not physically there, but they're seeing all these people physically there, and they're going, next time I'm going to be there, and then ultimately by a year from now, I'm hoping that the in-person is taking more of a front seat, where we also know that virtual is here to stay.
Yeah, I agree. But we're humans. We thrive by being together. Mm-hmm. And I remember when all this stuff happened and people were like, oh, events are over. People aren't going to do events. We love events as humans. We love to, networking events. We get to talk. We get to see our friends. So I don't think that events are not, I'm not going to even say I don't think events are not going away. It's just, we're in a space this is unusual times, we're dealing with a global pandemic. So we all have to kind of, that favorite word, pivot. We have to do it. Yeah. Are there going to be some adjustments this fall? We're booking events every day, but yes, we're prepared that we might have to make adjustments, but events are here to stay. We love seeing each other, handshaking, networking, doing business. So that is not going away. We just have to do what we do differently. So that's my take on it. We're going to have to make adjustments. No one has a crystal ball. We're going to have to make adjustments. We're going to have to, that P word again, pivot, but we'll be ready for it.
I was looking for a crystal ball, but apparently I left it at home.
Swami.
It's at my other workstation. Everything seems to be at the other workstation. I'm not sure
when you're looking for it, right?
But I got to tell you, you guys have been great. This is exactly the type of information that we're trying to convey to the team. And as you're talking about trust and you're talking about, being communicative and letting us know what we can or can't do and how far along, when's the, no, we can't do that anymore time. And, just being part of things, like even knowing that having, your teams as part of a green room is important to you, like that's a very minor thing that we can make an adjustment to.
Right.
And those are all part of it, because there are some very strange scenarios in the virtual side where not everybody has access to every space. And there's a lot of passwords, and there's, a link to everything. And it's very easy to get something wrong. So
Agreed.
there's just so many little tiny check boxes everywhere. Every one of our software programs like that. There's like 400
They're all different.
boxes.
And they create updates right in the middle of your event. And you're like, oh my God, really? Right now?
Right now. Speaking of right now, I do have to say one thing, guys. Remember, we had a text to donate right before an event. Do you guys remember that? Where they changed the text number?
How could we forget?
Yeah.
Yeah, the phone
that was
companies
less
made
fun.
an adjustment.
Yeah.
And it was right, Shauna, you probably don't know this, but right before we went live with the virtual fundraiser, the phone companies basically let us know, we're not doing those short numbers anymore. So we, within the span of 10 minutes or so, had to come up with all new graphics. And so that was a stand on your head moment. But it goes to show you, right?
Yeah, so
those are the things that can keep us up.
And those are the things you can't predict. Who was it?
Exactly.
Something with the we try to mitigate. It was Mike. Try to mitigate but cannot eliminate. That is so true, because it is. There's something to be said for the fact that it's like we are not perfect human beings, and we're getting a lot of information, a lot of technology. You're dealing with a lot of things. We're trying to make it as flawless as we can.
Right.
And that's it, and that's why we're all here. We're all here to try to help the client reach their goals. But your perspectives have been fantastic. It's exactly what we're looking to try to convey to the team. And and the fact that you can read Mike's message and Jason's message, and you're communicating with people from around the country and the world, and that's not too bad. Amazing. Right? I mean, there is an upside. It's just applying the technology.
Exactly.
And trying to find the right fit, and I think that's really what we're trying to achieve. But I think we're going to wrap up, because we're technically 6 minutes over, and that means I failed in my job somehow. So.
Sorry.
I'm blame it on Ryan. I'm going to blame it on Ryan. It's okay.
Perfect. It's a theme.
I'm going to blame it on Ryan. I mean, Ryan, look, I'm just going to blame it on you.
Oh, nice.
Oh, camera 2. Look at that.
Nice.
He's been practicing this for a while.
He's so fancy.
He needs
That's because he usually makes fun of me every week for it. Like somehow I do something wrong every week. So, but we appreciate all of your help. Thank you. And I'll send you a note. We'll get those shirts out to you, because we want you to have the Pirate University shirt,
That's right.
It's the very least we could give you.
All right. And I want the shirt, but I want with my signed cover of Ryan, a 914 Inc.
You got it.
Hold on.
Uh-oh. Sorry, Ryan.
Now he's gone.
Okay. It's okay.
Oh, wow.
914 Inc. cover.
Really?
I
don't get that. I'm in Connecticut. Send me one.
All right.
I will. There we go. My mom bought out all of the copies in the region, so I got you. No problem.
I didn't know what you were saying, Chereese. I was like, what are we trying to sign?
Yeah. I only say that because I was on the cover a couple of years ago, and I literally we sent them out as Christmas gifts. I went and got like a box from 914 Inc.
Love it.
Well, it's good stuff. Well, listen, thank you again, and we're going to wrap up. And for anybody watching, we can there's another session that should be labeled the Pirate Lounge. Just head on over there, and you can talk to whoever you want. You don't need to see our faces anymore.
Thank you, guys. This was fun.
Have a great day.
Thank you.
Bye.
Take care.